Here we are, guys, Fort Erie, and we are here today to watch a battle reenactment. So let's go and check it out. That's me footwork. So clever. So lots of tents set up. Lots of people in period costumes. And they really get into the spirit of it all. I'm excited to see it. And I'm looking forward to the battle reenactment. I'm guessing they're all the soldiers' tents, because back in the day that's all they would have had, right? (1812) recruiting.
Oh, hi there!
I thought I recognised you.
Here. I'm heading for lunch.
I said to Adam, that's Jim from the museum.
Right on.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah,
Give him
we're
hell.
going to give them hell. Yes, we do. We have our own cannoni, or cannons, over there. The artillery lines are over there.
Awesome.
Going about 1 o'clock.
Okay, we'll look out for you then. Good
Yeah.
luck.
Okay, you'll see us over there.
Good
Okay.
luck.
They actually sleep in these for the weekend.
They actually sleep in them for the weekend.
Yeah.
Wow. All
So
that
they
rain.
tell you not to look in because
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
where they're staying, like their hotel room.
As I trip over some of the wires, because I have been known to trip over.
Yeah, watch your step.
Look at this then. That's pretty cool, eh? There's a few of them on there. Wow. I do love my military history, and I'm so fascinated by the War of 1812, which is like weird to say.
How are you today?
Very well, sir. You?
Very well, thank you.
Nice.
Do you have any questions at all, or comments, or anything at all?
I'm just enjoying looking at everything at the moment.
Good.
It's. Are you ready for battle?
Yes, we have a gun demonstration at 1 o'clock. We're going to be forming up here probably at 12:45,
Okay.
and then marching out to the field and doing a gun demonstration, and then the battle follows at 2
Oh, awesome.
o'clock.
Awesome. How long have you been doing this then?
Myself since 1977.
Really? Oh, wow.
Just out of high school, but I had a big break from it, so I really got into it seriously again about 1994.
Oh, awesome. So you're here every year, are you?
We try to be.
Yeah.
This is the big show of the year because it's such a centrally, in North America, it's a
Yeah.
centrally located site, and it's very historic. So
Yeah,
a
for
lot
sure.
of the groups make an extra effort to come here, and we have the fort, and the staff here are very good to us. They open the fort to us. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah,
Where
we have
else
a
do you go?
relationship.
Where else do you go?
The Great Lakes Basin area. There was a event up at on the Upper St. Lawrence,
Yeah.
near Upper Canada Village.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, in Eastern Ontario, and then we this year I was down near the eastern end of Lake Erie. There's a fort there, Fort Meigs, and yeah, the War of 1812 is all scattered around the Great
Yeah.
Lakes area.
Yeah. Oh, awesome, awesome. Well, I hope it's a good one for you today.
Well, thank you. Have you been here before?
Oh, I haven't been here. Adam has. He's from Niagara Falls, but no, this is
I
my
came
first
last
time.
year.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, very good.
Last year was hot.
Yes, it was. It was. This is actually pretty good. Pretty good. We got rained on this morning, and but that never seems to stop us. I would have got out of this years ago if the rain bothered me.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I love these.
Yeah,
I love
yeah.
them.
They really are, and the reenactment guns, when you get them into an artillery park like this, yeah, a lot of the gunners come out for this one because it's extra fun.
Yeah, I bet.
And there's so many other troops here, including a lot of Americans. They come up from the States, and yeah, so we can do a good big battle demonstration. To the north of the fort, there's all the siege lines. They had a siege here. Now the siege lines were way out, but being the site, they compressed them in close to the wall. But you get an idea of the entrenchments.
Yeah.
And things the British built.
Fantastic. Oh, that's awesome. Awesome. What is your name, sir?
I'm sorry?
What is your name?
Oh, Kent.
Kent.
From
Hello.
the Chatham area in
Awesome.
southwestern Ontario.
Good to meet you.
Nice. What part of it? Now, you're from England, right?
I'm from England, yeah.
What part?
So I'm from the east side, east coast.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Norfolk?
So Suffolk,
Suffolk.
the one below.
You
Norfolk.
take care. Thank you. Have a good
Be
visit.
safe.
Okay, thank you.
And we shoot it live there. Because again, you're shooting solid round.
I
out
love
of an
these.
antique. It's like I was going to a shooting contest for 2 weeks in Shelburne with my musket. You know, and it's an annual reenactment thing. I get to go because I'm the cast.
Little cannon.
It's a tiny one, eh? I wonder how effective they were.
Yeah, pretty important.
Well, if they have the announcer, he will tell you. He tells you a lot of information.
Yeah.
If you can hear him.
So these guys that do this and travel around the country doing it, they must really, really love it, mustn't they?
Especially if you sleep in those tents. We got to be hot. The Americans on the other side.
Yeah, so here we go. See your tents, where all the reenactors stay for the weekend. And the whole thing's across 2 days, which is pretty cool, with different events. And there's the old Fort Erie over there. And I haven't actually been inside Fort Erie yet, so I'm hoping that I can do that today. Go and check it all out. And across there, away in the distance over there, you can see the American tents. But I'm really, really looking forward to this reenactment. There we go. That looks like the officers and everybody else. As Adam says, the fancy tent.
Yeah, their own bedroom.
Yeah. Some drums over there and some whistles. I don't know what they call them.
Flutes.
Don't sound like a flute. Piccolo, is it?
Linden Place is calling. Hello?
So you can smell on here is wood burning. It's not an unpleasant smell, is it? It's a pretty nice smell actually. It's the smell of winter. So first thing today, they'll be bringing all the cannons up, doing a little show of that, and we are just waiting for that currently. A lot of these guys have been doing this for years and years and years, but what is cool to see is a lot of young people also joining in now to carry on the tradition, hopefully. Absolutely amazing.
They've never been very patient when it comes to sieges. They've been very good at everything else.
Yeah.
So Lieutenant General Drummond, who commanded British forces here at the time, decided to attack the fort, and he sent a 3-prong attack in. All the prongs failed, but the one broke into the fort on the far side, and they got into the fort over the wall. They were trying to turn one of the guns around to fire into the fort, and there was a ready magazine underneath the bastion.
Yeah.
It caught fire and detonated.
Wow.
And just blew up that side of the fort.
Wow.
And that ended the assault. The attack that went in over here, you see the slight rise along the ground just on the other side of the field?
Yeah.
That's the remains of the American defense lines that they built, which ran from the fort over to an area over here called Snake Hill.
Wow.
On top of Snake Hill, they placed a battery under the command of a guy by the name of Major Towson. And his guns were firing so much that they called it Towson's Lighthouse.
Oh.
A foreign regiment in British service, de Wattevilles, was assigned to assault it. And they got to the base of the walls and they discovered the scaling ladders were too short. So they tried to go around the battery, through into the lake and into the rear of the American positions, and they got absolutely cut to pieces.
Wow.
And then the third assault went in between the fort and the river,
Yeah.
and they ran into a buried mine which the Americans detonated.
Wow.
And there were over 1,100 British killed during that portion of the siege.
Jeez.
And then Lieutenant General Drummond decided winter's coming on. The weather had been absolutely horrendous. And so he pulled back to Chippawa, which is just north of the fort, and they went into winter quarters. And everything from Fort Erie to Chippewa Creek became no man's. The thing I enjoy doing is talking.
Guys, this is the gentleman who's telling the story here. What is your name, sir?
My name is Michael Hurley. I've been a historic reenactor for 47 years. I've carried a musket. Now I carry a camera and I photograph the events. So we've just been discussing the siege of Fort Erie, which takes place between September and, or between August and September 1814, and really represents one of the last major military actions that takes place during the War of 1812.
Yeah.
The British lose the siege because they don't succeed in recapturing the fort, and they leave. They move their forces back just to the north and go into winter quarters. The Americans hold the fort until December of 1814, when they evacuate back over to Buffalo and they blow up the fort. Now, the fort remained unoccupied throughout the 19th century. The British never rebuilt the fort. It was used as a rifle range by the Canadian militia in the late 19th century. But what is interesting is in 1821, the locals of Fort Erie took the stone that was used to construct the fort, and they built St. Paul's Church, which is just a little to the north. So the original Fort Erie technically still exists, but in a different way.
For sure. What a way to repurpose that stone though, eh? Wow. I passed that on the way in, I must admit, so...
Well, that stone to build that church came from this fort in 1821 when the Americans had blown it up and it had never been rebuilt.
Wow, goosebumps.
Yep.
Let's just show your attire. Look at
I'm
that.
dressed as a civilian, and the smock is called a wagoner's smock, and that would give you an idea of what I do for a living. Would be a teamster, or I drive wagons, teams of horses and oxen.
Yeah.
And it's to keep your clothes dirty, keep your clothes clean. If you remember when you were a little kid going to school, you'd take your dad's shirt to do finger painting and keep your clothing clean.
For sure.
That's what this does.
Awesome, awesome. So how many years did you say you've been doing this now?
I've been a reenactor for 47 years. I started out during American Revolutionary War reenacting.
Yeah.
I've done 7 years war reenacting, what in North America we call the French and Indian Wars, and I've done War of 1812. When I hit year 30, I sort of had to reinvent the hobby for myself.
Yeah.
And so I gave up my musket, picked up a camera.
Bring the
Now I
camera, you're
photograph
the photographer now.
Yep.
That is awesome. Thank you for speaking to us. I appreciate that and
No
giving a little
problem.
bit of history. It's a history that fascinates me.
Yep.
You know, I guess with being British as well.
Yeah.
You know, it would be rude for me not to be fascinated because a lot of lives lost there, weren't there?
Yep. Where are you from?
So I'm from England.
Yep.
On the east side. So
Okay. Which part?
Suffolk, Norfolk.
Yes. Okay. My grandfather came from Leicester.
Really?
Yeah.
Also a little bit further down.
A
Yeah.
little further down. Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. Have you been to England?
I've not. My wife and I are planning a visit because we're looking at either next year or the year following year. We're going to go and visit England and Scotland and do the tour thing.
Scotland is absolutely amazing.
And it's interesting. This fort was built in the 1930s as a make works project during the Depression. It's the site of the final fort. There was actually another fort built here by the British in 1763, right down by the river.
Oh, okay.
And it suffered from the problem of flooding. And so they moved it in 1803 up here and never quite finished it.
Wow, there's some history here.
Yeah.
Fantastic. There they go, guys.
Yep.
Cannons are on the move. Let's go and check them out. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I mean, it's like modern and old, isn't it? Modern cars.
And on that,
Old
fire
artillery.
It's loud.
Follow in line.
Here comes Jim from the Military Museum in Niagara Falls.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the 41st annual Siege of Fort Erie. If you can believe that, 41 years they've been doing this. Cannons, wow, that's a good showing. I think we have everything from 3-pounders to 6-pounders on the battlefield today. These are all British artillery, so this is the British side. If you look on the field, you'll probably see a bunch of soldiers in blue. You're probably thinking, well, the British wear red, not blue. Why are they wearing blue? Well, in the British system, military system, during the War of 1812, the artillery weren't actually in the army, per se. They were in a separate branch called the Board of Ordnance, and as such, they wore blue coats instead of red coats. Unfortunately for the war, though, the Americans were almost the exact same uniform. They also wore blue coats with red cuffs and collars and gold lace, just like their counterparts. Few slight differences, so that was it. So you want to make sure your cannons are pretty far back. If the red coats get turned around, you don't know which way they're going, they might shoot their own guys. But usually they're pretty far back. You had the powder monkey, and he was the very back of the gun, and then you'd have the detachment commander overseeing the gun. So the first command would be to check the vents. The vents at the back of the cannon to pull out a metal, it's called a vent brick. And basically it's a big, looks like a big knitting needle. It's just a big metal, it's a piece of metal needle, I guess. And you would go down the back of the hole, little hole in the back of the cannon to make sure it was all clean. And then you put your thumb on that hole, create suction.
This one get wet.
We're practicing right now the fire procedure, so at this point, the cannons would be loaded. I don't believe they are right now. They're just doing a training exercise. You see they're raising the sponge rammer up in the air. That means the cannon's fired or loaded. My apologies. They told me it was a dry run.
That is loud.
So now they're cleaning the gun.
They're cleaning it.
And once it's clean, they wait a few minutes just to make sure everything is that was supposed to blow up did blow up. Now in battle, you wouldn't wait. We give it about a 5-minute wait just to be safe. So while we're waiting, like I was saying, the first command would be to check vents. The vents are going to put that vent prick down the touch hole to make sure it's clean. And then the next command is to worm the piece. At which point, the worm, which is the person standing to the left of the gun, has a big, essentially a stick with a corkscrew on the end. And that will go down the barrel and make sure that everything that was supposed to blow up did, and make sure there's nothing stuck at the bottom of the barrel. Gunpowder was kept in cloth bags when you put it in. So you want to make sure that no cloth is sitting down there burning. So the worm was designed to go down the barrel, grab anything that was down there, and pull it out. The next command will be to sponge the piece. So the person standing to the right of the gun has essentially on one end a big Q-tip, essentially is what it is. And they soak that in water, and that will go down the barrel and clean it and also extinguish any burning embers that might still be down the barrel.
All the babies are coming in.
The ventsman would put his thumb on top of the vent hole, and that creates suction. So when you pull the sponge out, it would create a vacuum, which would also extinguish anything still burning down there, and also try to pull any remnants of anything left on the barrel out as well. All right, so we're ready to fire again. If you don't like loud noises, you may want to plug your ears. Here we go.
Well, it's okay, you don't have to. Nothing. I don't.
What's it sound like? Let's show the same thing.
Yeah, two more.
Okay, ready? Two more.
You just have to blink and then it's done.
Yeah, I think you're having an issue.
Whoa.
That's the 6-pounder, the one at the end, that's the big gun.
So we are waiting
Myself and a fellow called Fred Fischel, who
for the soldiers to line up
I did all the research at the
and head to battlefield.
drew them up. Fred did, I did recos down here at Kingston. And in Memorial, where there was a plaque laying for
I will take the left marker now!
Left bunker, thank you.
Hold on! March! Up! Fight!
Take it very seriously, don't they? Which I like.
God, Corporal Chip, back in line with the gun!
battle they go.
Wait, is that where the
Take cover.
So the opening phases of the Battle of Chippawa were small skirmishes as British and Canadian light troops, supported by Indigenous allies, began to fire over the creek towards the American encampment. The American commander, held by the name of General Brown, did not care for this, and he ordered his 3rd Brigade, led by Peter Buell Porter, for any Buffalonians, that's whom Porter Avenue is named after, to lead his militia and Indigenous allies into the woods to clear out the enemy, which led to brutal bushfighting back and forth through the woods. These initial troops you're seeing on the field are examples of light troops, soldiers that are trained to scout, skirmish, and spread out on the battlefield to just pick away at the enemy. Light troops could rarely win a battle, but they were very good at scouting for the enemy and weakening the enemy force.
Charles said you could be Laura Secord and go warn the British.
Hey, guys.
Now, as the main American force comes out onto the battlefield, you'll notice a variety of different uniforms being worn. Traditionally, the American Army was supposed to be wearing blue, but they ran into supply issues getting a hold of blue dye. That is a natural result of declaring war on your blue dye supplier. Enough so that by 1814, the cost of blue dye was 15 times what its pre-war cost was. So you saw a variety of uniforms. You saw twill or beige uniforms, like you see the light troops out here. You saw some of the blue. You saw black, green, but you also saw a lot of gray being worn, which you see troops marching out now. At Chippawa, about a third of the American force were wearing these gray coats, which were actually work jackets that would have been issued to the soldiers. And when the men were initially told they would be wearing them as their combat dress, they were not happy. When you join the Army, one of the reasons is to get a snappy looking uniform, and these are stable jackets. But those men in gray proved themselves to be one tough cookie out on the battlefield, and the gray coat would become immortalized at battles like Chippawa and Lundy's Lane. 2nd York Militia in their green uniforms. Due to the cost, not every militiaman could receive a nice, red coat, so they kind of had to make do with whatever they had available, and green cloth was in plentiful supply and was sent out to equip the men. Now, as the soldiers are firing, you're going to notice every once in a while their muskets go click instead of bang. That is no fault of the soldiers themselves. That is the technology of the time period. Flintlock muskets rely on a piece of flint striking against a piece of steel, creating sparks that land in a side dish called the pan. It is all exposed to the elements, and in that condition, a gust of wind can affect it. So wind, rain, humidity, anything can affect it. With the heavy rain we had earlier today, this is a credit to the soldiers and the reenactors on the field, how well they are doing getting these muskets to work. Now, in good conditions, a musket will misfire on average about 1 in 5 times, about 20%. You add those other adverse weather conditions, these weapons can quickly become sticks instead of firearms. Now, another issue with these firearms is most of them are smooth bore, meaning there's no rifling groove down the barrel, and that means accuracy is not that great on them. A well-trained soldier at about 60 to 80 yards could aim and hit an enemy if he was a good shot. However, past that, good luck. At 200 yards, your margin of error is going to be as much as 18 feet in any direction. So how on earth do you get a weapon that doesn't like to work all the time and you can't really aim with to be effective? Well, you saw it earlier, the volley. Firing en masse is going to deal with those problems. Because if somebody misfires, there's enough people firing that there's enough lead going across the battlefield, aiming is no longer necessary. So one of the most common questions is, why are the British in bright red? That fog of war. Every army in the world is using the same technology, and they understood they need to be identified out on the battlefield. A bright and distinctive uniform would scream out to your friends, "Don't shoot me, I'm on your side." So the British, they're in red. The Americans traditionally are in blue. And as I mentioned, green coats, there's gray coats. What happens to those guys? Well, unfortunately, friendly fire was a huge problem during the war. The Glengarry Light Infantry, a regiment wearing green, gray, and black, which I believe there's a couple of them out on the battlefield. They, at the Battle of Lundy's Lane, took heavier losses from the British than from the Americans because they could not be identified in the smoke. And those gray-coated Americans, for almost 20 minutes, were being fired upon by both sides. So today, camouflage is great, but 200 years ago, as they would put it, it would make you a landowner. Now, in the Battle of Chippawa, the initial phases was fought in the woods, back and forth as the two sides pushed, with the Americans and their indigenous allies eventually pushing the Canadians, the British, and their allies all the way back almost to the village of Chippawa. Whereas the Americans approached the edge of the woods, they were met by a harsh volley from the British forces who had marched across the bridge and were going to meet the Americans out on the battlefield. As the British began to deploy, their artillery opened fire on Americans in gray, crossing over the bridge onto the battlefield. And it was at this point that there is an apocryphal story, take it with a grain of salt, that as the Americans were crossing under artillery fire, the British commander was shocked by their ability and remarked, "Those are regulars, by God." And to this day, "Regulars by God" is a motto in the United States Army.
That's hilarious. That's awesome. Oh, I see what you're saying. I got any mods? Any mods can get rid of that guy.
Now, Chippawa became a watershed moment for the United States military because as the Americans deployed out on the battlefield, it became the first time in the war that they faced British regulars in equal numbers on an open battlefield. In just a straight-up musket slugging competition out on the battlefield, they bashed away at each other until finally the British could handle them more and they were forced to retreat. This was a huge victory for the Americans. It would actually mark the first time American troops met British in equal numbers on an open battlefield ever. Not even George Washington could do it and beat them. The gray coat was entered into the American legend of their military, and to this day, it is still worn. If you visit West Point Military Academy, the cadets do not wear blue, they wear gray. And Chippewa is just one of the reasons why. The other, it's cheaper.
Dan, are you here still?
Well, you'll be very pleased to know that on the battlefield today, there is a reenactment unit that is representing a unit that historically was 100% Canadian. Even their officers were Canadian, so feel free to give them a cheer if you'd like. All right, I'll point them out to you. So they're fighting for the Americans. If you look at the far end of the American line, there are gray-coated soldiers with green hat bands. These are soldiers of the Canadian Volunteers. The Canadian Volunteers were dissatisfied Canadians who in 1813 joined up with the Americans and formed their own unit. About 150 Canadians fought within the unit, and their commanding officer was actually a member of the legislature for Newark. So if you think you got problems with your MPs today, but good news, their commander, Joseph Wilcox, he got what every Canadian trader should get, and that is a grave in Buffalo. In 1814, he was killed during the siege of Fort Erie, leading a skirmish against Canadian and British forces. Now, historically, with the American victory after the Battle of Chippawa, they marched north all the way to Queenston Heights, while the British withdrew back to the protection of Forts Niagara and George, where they hunkered down. Now, the Americans believed that the naval forces on the lake would come and support them, and so they waited on the heights, looking out towards the lake, hoping that they would spot those sails. Unknown to them, the American commander of the fleet, a fellow by the name of Chauncey, was absolutely refusing to move out under fear that another raid could be launched against his main base. After waiting for over 2 weeks, the Americans decided to withdraw back to their camp in Chippawa. As they were withdrawing, though, the British followed behind, harassing them, and the Americans sent one of their brigades, those famous greycoats under Winfield Scott, to reconnoiter the enemy in force. They met them on an open field along an old farmer's lane, a lane called Lundy's Lane. Now you notice some of the Americans here, right in front of where I'm standing, right by the tent here, you notice they're tapping away at their flints. If you are having trouble firing, this is one of the ways that you can fix the problem. It's called napping. You tap away at the edge, it breaks away pieces, and it gives you a fresh new edge, so you'll hopefully get a much better spark. If you've ever heard the term, don't get caught napping, that is where that comes from. If you are napping your flint, your opponent knows you do not have a working musket. Don't get caught napping. Their commander, General Drummond, whom the hill is named after, turned to his men and demanded that they retake the guns. This would lead to hours of fighting on any Canadian battlefield, and by the time the battle was done, about 1 out of every 3 men who set foot on the battlefield had been killed, wounded, or captured. Now I'll point out as well, if you look at the far end of the American line now, you'll see men in a variety of outfits. These are men of the militia. Service in Canada, the United States, was required of all able-bodied men. They were required to serve anywhere from a few days to a few months service. In fact, some could be recruited for as long as a year, during which time they would receive some training and some equipment. The one thing that was often lacking for them was uniforms. Since every single able-bodied male in your country was in it, that's a heck of a lot of uniforms to have on ready. So militia would try to build up uniforms based on similar coats that they had or similar styles, and sometimes they would even purchase large quantities of cloth so that their militia company could take the cloth home and make uniforms out of it.
She's like, hi guys. Oh wait, she got a guy. She caught a guy by aiming. They're so close range.
Now Now, Lundy's Lane ended in confusion. In the heavy fighting and the smoke and the darkness, neither side was able to really tell where the enemy was. After the final British charge, many of the Americans believed, after a long pause, the enemy had withdrawn. And with heavy casualties, including the Senior General Brown being wounded, the interim commander, a fellow by the name of Eleazar Wellick Ripley, he made the decision to withdraw to preserve his force. He withdrew, and in the smoke and the darkness, the British advanced, just as the Americans had vacated the heights and taken as many guns as they could. And seeing the abandoned equipment, they believed that the enemy had retreated. Both sides left the field claiming victory. But the British, believing the Americans could come back, actually built barricades out of horse carcasses to prepare in case the enemy returned. Come the morning, the number of dead on the field was so high, and with the heat, they could not bury them all. They were forced to burn the bodies in huge funeral pyres. Now, as the battle is concluding, I mentioned about Lundy's Lane, how they treated the battlefield. It was not uncommon in the aftermath of a battle for officers to treat with one another, which means to hold discussions over how the field would be treated, how the wounded would be treated, prisoners. A lot of times prisoners would receive what was known as parole, in which they would be allowed to return home under promise that they would no longer serve until formally exchanged. This was a win-win because not only did these men get to go home, but it also meant that you did not have to pay to feed and take care of all of these prisoners that were now in your that you've taken.
The night reenactment's better. Last time I went. The drum. Why is it there? I don't know.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, as the battle has wound down, it is a tradition amongst the reenactors. As lovers of history, we understand the ground we walk on has been walked before. Where we do these things, the people that we represent were here. This is an actual battlefield, and it is a tradition amongst the reenacting community that we recognize them after engagements with the playing of a lament. So during the playing of the lament, I ask, if possible, remove your caps and please observe silence.
The drum is always.
Ladies and gentlemen, round of applause for all of the reenactors. They have come from all over, traveling near and far, and braving our weather to come out here and represent history in their own unique way. Now, if what you're seeing out here looks interesting and it looks like something you might enjoy doing, the easiest way to...
What did you guys think of that then? I thought that was really awesome. It was loud, it was chaotic, but really good. Let me know what you think.